In the 1980s, a time filled with flashy cars and wild designs, one strange machine quietly appeared on the streets. It looked like something from the future, but also like it was trying to bring the past with it. It had a long nose, a short back, and a name that sounded like it came from a cartoon. This car was called the Zimmer Quicksilver, and it came from Florida, not Italy or Germany. Between 1986 and 1988, only a few were made, and most people today have never seen one, or even heard the name. The story begins with a company called Zimmer Motor Cars Corporation, which was founded in 1978 by Paul Zimmer and his son Bob Zimmer in Pompano Beach, Florida. Their idea was to build new cars that looked old. Not just kind of old, but like cars from the 1930s with giant fenders and long hoods. Their first car, the Zimmer Golden Spirit, used a Ford Mustang chassis and was designed to look like something out of a gangster movie. But in 1986, Zimmer decided to try something different. Instead of building another huge, classic-looking car, they created a low, sleek coupe with a mid-engine setup. They called it the Zimmer Quicksilver. At the heart of the Quicksilver was a modified Pontiac Fiero. The Fiero, made by General Motors, had a plastic body, a mid-engine layout, and was light and compact. But Zimmer stretched the Fiero's wheelbase by 16 inches and increased the total length by 28 inches. They then replaced the plastic body panels with custom-made fiberglass parts. The result was a long-nosed coupe with pop-up headlights, chrome bumpers, and a shape that confused just about everyone. Was it a sports car, a luxury car, or both? It was hard to tell. Inside, Zimmer added leather seats, wood grain trim, power windows, power locks, air conditioning, and a better sound system. The goal was to make it feel like a proper luxury car, not a rebodied Fiero. Under the hood, or rather behind the seats, sat a 2.8-liter V6 engine, the same one used in the regular Fiero. It made around 140 horsepower and was paired with a 3-speed automatic transmission. The car could go from 0 to 60 in about 10 seconds, and the top speed was around 121 miles per hour. Not fast by sports car standards, but it looked fast. Kind of like a Cadillac that ran out of room at the back. The curb weight was close to 2,921 pounds, and fuel economy hovered around 20 miles per gallon. Not terrible for a car that looked like it came from a 1980s sci-fi movie set. Zimmer only built around 170 units of the Quicksilver between 1986 and 1988. Each one was made by hand, which helped explain the high price tag. $51,950 in 1986. That was more than a Corvette. In 1988, Zimmer Motor Cars Corporation went bankrupt. But years later, in 1997, a man named Art Zimmer, not related to Paul or Bob, brought back the Zimmer name and kept building neoclassic cars until 2020. Today, the Zimmer Quicksilver is mostly forgotten, but for a brief moment in the 1980s, a company from Florida tried to mix the past, present, and future into one strange machine. And while the world may not have been ready for it, the Quicksilver still stands out as one of the weirdest things ever built on a Pontiac Fiero. Back in the 1980s, American cars were going through changes. Boxy shapes, new emissions laws, and slower engines were becoming normal. But there were still people who wanted to make exciting cars that looked fast, sounded tough, and turned heads without being loud about it. One of those cars came from a very unlikely team-up. It was called the ASC McLaren Capri, and it quietly became one of the strangest and rarest American cars of that decade. This story began with a man named Peter Muscat, an engineer who had a different idea about the Mercury Capri. In 1982, he took a normal 1980 Mercury Capri and turned it into something unique. He made it into a 2-seat convertible. Not a simple roof-cutting job, but a full transformation with a powered canvas top. He thought it looked good. He thought Ford might like the idea too. But Ford said no. Mercury, however, was interested. Their Capri was struggling to stand out in showrooms, and this odd convertible might be the trick to bring it back to life. So Peter Muscat partnered with American Sunroof Company, better known as ASC, based in Southgate, Michigan. ASC was already known for making high-quality convertible conversions, But this time, they were not just cutting roofs off cars. They teamed up with McLaren Engines, a company based in Livonia, Michigan, not to be confused with the British McLaren. This American McLaren was known for engineering work on Indy cars and turbocharged racing engines. The result was a car that looked like a mix between a sports car and a custom cruiser. Between 1984 and 1986, they built only 993 of these cars. That is fewer than many exotic supercars. Each car started as a Mercury Capri, which was already based on the Ford Fox body platform. Then ASC stripped it down. The rear seat was removed, a new tonneau cover was added over the back, the windshield was lowered, special 15-inch BBS mesh wheels were used, the front bumper was redesigned, and instead of a manual folding top, it had a one-piece manually operated soft top with a heated glass rear window. Under the hood, the ASC McLaren Capri came with a 5.0-liter V8 engine, the same one used in the regular Capri and Mustang GT. It made 175 horsepower in the early years, and later versions pushed closer to 210 horsepower. It used a 4-speed automatic transmission, which was not exciting, but it was smooth. This car was more about relaxed cruising than drag racing. Inside, the changes were just as serious. The rear seats were gone. 2 custom leather sports seats filled the cabin. The dashboard was trimmed in leather. A numbered plaque was added to show the car's build number. Buyers could order special colors too, like midnight blue with a silver top or bright orange with a gray interior. Even though it wore a Mercury badge, the ASC McLaren Capri was sold through specialty dealers. It was not cheap. Prices often crossed $20,000 at a time when a Mustang GT cost much less. That may be why it never sold in big numbers, but that low production also made it rare. Today, the ASC McLaren Capri is mostly forgotten. People confuse it with the Mustang. Some think it is just another old Fox body. But if you see one on the road, take a closer look. That car came from an idea, a risk, and a partnership that tried something different. And for a brief moment in the 1980s, it worked. Sort of. Most people do not think of the early 1980s as a great time for performance cars. Gas prices were up, insurance rates were high, and many cars were just not fun to drive. But right in the middle of all that, Chevrolet did something odd. They took a front-wheel drive family car and gave it a sporty twist. The result was the Chevrolet Citation X11, built from 1981 to 1985. It was a strange mix of muscle car dreams and compact car reality, and for a brief moment it almost worked. The story started in 1980 when General Motors launched the Chevrolet Citation. It was the company's first front-wheel drive compact car. It was meant to replace older rear-wheel drive models like the Nova. The Citation used GM's new X-body platform and came in several body styles, including a 3-door hatchback and a 2-door notchback coupe. It was assembled in North Tarrytown, New York, Oklahoma City, Oklahoma, Ypsilanti, Michigan, and Ramos Arizpe, Mexico. It sold well at first, but quickly developed a reputation for build quality problems. Still, Chevrolet wanted to give it a little excitement, so they created a performance version called the Citation X11. The Citation X11 was more than just badges. From 1981 to 1984, it came with a 2.8-liter V6 high-output engine called the LH7, which made 135 horsepower and 165 pound-feet of torque. After 1982, torque dropped to 145 pound-feet due to emission rules. In 1985, Chevrolet switched to a 2.8-liter V6 with multi-port fuel injection called the LB6, which made 130 horsepower and 155 pound-feet of torque. The car came with either a 4-speed manual transmission with overdrive or a 3-speed automatic. Chevrolet also gave the X11 a full performance package called the F41 Sport Suspension. This included stiffer shocks, larger stabilizer bars in the front and rear, and firmer bushings. Starting in 1982, the steering rack was relocated to improve handling. The car also had 14 by 6.5-inch alloy wheels and wide P215/60 R14 tires, which gave it a low, planted look. It even had a functional cowl induction hood scoop between 1981 and 1984. In 1985, the Scoop stayed, but it was just for show. The rear deck got a spoiler, and X11 decals were slapped onto the doors. Inside, the car came with cloth bucket seats, a leather-wrapped sports steering wheel, and a dashboard with full gauges and a tachometer. For a compact car, it looked ready for business. On paper, it could hit 0 to 60 miles per hour in around 8.5 seconds in 1981 and 9.2 seconds in later years. That was not supercar fast, but for a front-wheel drive hatchback in the early 80s, it was impressive. The Citation X11 even went racing. It competed in the SCCA Showroom Stock B class and won national championships in 1982 and 1984. That gave it a bit of credibility with drivers who wanted something affordable but capable on a track. But even with these efforts, the X11 could not escape the problems that haunted the regular Citation. Reports of poor reliability and quality hurt its image. General Motors stopped making the Citation after 1985. Total Citation production was around 1.6 million units, but only a small portion were X11 models. Today, the Chevrolet Citation X11 is mostly forgotten. Some car fans remember it as a fun idea that got buried under a mountain of recalls and disappointment. Others just remember the hood scoop. Either way, it was one of the strangest attempts to make a sporty front-wheel drive compact in the 1980s, and it left behind a very odd tire mark in American car history. Most people think of Chrysler in the 1980s as the company that brought back front-wheel drive and made a lot of minivans. But during that same time, Chrysler quietly tried to make something very different. A sporty car with computers, turbo power, and even talking electronics. That car was the Chrysler Laser Turbo, and while it did not stay on the road for long, it left behind an unusual story. The Chrysler Laser Turbo came out in 1984. It was built on Chrysler's G-Body platform, which was based on the company's famous K platform. This meant it had front-wheel drive and shared parts with other Chrysler cars. But the Laser was supposed to be more stylish and high-tech than the usual family sedans. It was built alongside the Dodge Daytona and shared most of its structure, but Chrysler tried to make the Laser feel more like a luxury coupe. Assembly took place in two cities, St. Louis, Missouri, and Sterling Heights, Michigan. Under the hood, the 1984 Laser came with a 2.2-liter inline-4 engine that made 99 horsepower and 121 pound-feet of torque. But the real attraction was the 2.2-liter Turbo 1 engine, which boosted power up to 140 horsepower and 160 pound-feet of torque. In 1985, this turbo engine was upgraded with a computer-controlled wastegate, increasing the numbers to 146 horsepower and 168 pound-feet of torque. By 1986, Chrysler added a new 2.5-liter engine option with 100 horsepower, and the turbo engine stayed at 146 horsepower, but torque was pushed up to 170 pound-feet. You could get the Laser Turbo with either a 5-speed manual transmission or a 3-speed automatic, depending on how much fun or frustration you wanted in city traffic. For a car that weighed about 2,530 pounds, the turbo version could go from 0 to 60 miles per hour in around 8.5 to 9 seconds, which was decent for a front-wheel drive hatchback in the mid-1980s. The base model was simple, but Chrysler added fancy features to the higher trims. One of the most talked about was the digital dashboard, which showed speed, fuel, and other info with glowing green readouts. Some cars even came with a voice alert system that warned the driver when doors were open or when the fuel was low. There was also an electronic navigator that showed things like average miles per gallon and time to destination. The XE trim had most of these features, and in 1985, Chrysler added the XT trim, which came with a body kit, 15-inch wheels, a turbo boost gauge, and a stiffer suspension. Chrysler sold around 147,500 units of the Laser from 1984 to 1986. Prices started at $8,650 and went up to about $10,545. Even though the car was only around for 3 years, it helped Chrysler test out a lot of electronic systems that would show up in other cars later. And while the Laser name disappeared, the ideas behind it kept going in cars like the Plymouth Laser, which came later with help from Mitsubishi. The Chrysler Laser Turbo might not be famous today, but it was one of those cars where a company tried to do something new, and for once, gave a sports car a brain, one that sometimes even talked back.